trying to finish a podcast. I put added to a podcast and I added to the wrong podcast. Really? So it wasn't finished podcast. Are you podcasting? How does one podcast, anyways? Well, you could have a phone and you could have a Kindle. But what do you need a Kindle for? If you're reading stuff, I'm reading from the Kindle onto the iPhone and recording with the Samsung. Oh, so you reveal how you do a podcast? Yeah. While the explicit central goal of these practices is for the ritual performer to attain Buddhahood, in order to relieve the sufferings of living beings, is the reason why I do these podcasts. And it's to relieve the deities can also be invoked for more immediate and this worldly purposes, such as the attainment of health and long life. Yeah, and I believe that meditation and and it improves the health and gives a long life. And what's the purpose of a long life? So you can meditate longer. You can meditate for a longer time in the physical body of a man. No. What? Is that why you play tennis? Because they say it adds 10 years to your life. Yeah. Of good fortune and prosperity, or for defense against malevolent spirits and other obstacles and forces of evil. Well, yeah, but you've been attacked by malevolent spirits in the past, and did it protect you? Yeah, well, there was actually this one time the Iron Witch was attacking me in my sleep, and I actually remembered to say the 5 charged names and was able to break it off. And it was quite disturbing. And the partner I was with at the time was observed or felt the presence of the evil witch. Really? That happened to you? Yeah. The ability to do this is grounded in the activities of the lamas of the past. And the ability for me to do this podcast is grounded in the activity of lamas of the past, who established the ongoing lineages of tantric practice, by which today's tantric practitioners continue to control the forces of the apparent world. These ongoing traditions of tantric practice. Oh, so you have a tantric practice? What is tantra? Yeah, I had a girlfriend and I said I practiced tantra. And she said, "What's tantra?" Yeah, that's an ongoing question. What is tantra? Yeah, I still wonder. So, we're trying to find out what is tantra. Tantric practice became the property of major monasteries. Yeah. This way it can become your own property in this podcast if you're making yourself a monastery at home. Oh, are you in your at-home monastery? Yeah. This is, you can make yourself like into a monastery. What you do is when you practice meditation, is you make your body into a monastery. Okay. So it's a matter of just attention. Yeah. So, passed on through the centuries by hereditary or reincarnate lamas, much of those status, charisma, and political power associated with their connection to one another of the lineages of tantric practice. Yeah, and this, I established, my playing the piano is a lineage from practicing in the past. Oh, is that why you were searching after the ghost of Beethoven or something? What were you wandering all over Germany and going to the different houses, apartments, and all these places of Beethoven and looking for Did you actually go to Schubert's house? I think you did go to Schubert's in Vienna, or we went to. I went to. The person who has a nice house is Haydn. He had a nice garden and a nice house. His house, at the time, early years of Vienna would have been considered the suburbs, but now it's in central in Vienna. And they were talking about how actually that period of time before machines was actually quiet, and you could play a clavichord or a harpsichord and still hear it. I mean, the noise might be a horse carriage going by. I mean, there's not much noise. So. Thus, tantric lamas are above all ritual performers and teachers of the skills in this podcast. Thus, all tantric lamas are above this podcast, and all ritual performers and teachers of skills, of ritual performance skills that historically have been seen as of central value to Tibetan society. So, yeah, I say how I do book readings, and I have been reading physical books, but this I skipped over to Asian traditions of meditation. Yeah, so I'm reading from that. Oh, okay. That's cool. Some of the books that I have gotten is Christopher Hitchens. Actually wrote, it's called The Eminent Lives, Thomas Jefferson. Yeah, what's he got to do with Asian traditions? Oh yeah, I don't even know what this stuff is. Well, I do know it's philosophers of nothingness. So there's actually nothing in this. There's nothing in this book. Why you would read a philosophy of nothing? Yeah, well, philosophers of nothingness. James W. Heisig. Oh, Japanese philosophy. Kyoto School. Yeah, what's in the Kyoto School? Are you going to Kyoto? Well, I would have to read this book, Japanese Religion. Yeah, when are you going to read it? This Joseph, and I actually didn't know Potiphar's. I didn't know the anthology of the story of the chaste youth and the lustful stepmother. Yeah, like if you're studying Tantra, you might want to look at the languages. Look at the languages on the back of this book. Joseph and Potiphar's wife in world literature. Yeah, an interesting story. What happened to Joseph? The lustful stepmother. What are all these languages they have on the back of the book? Huh. Oh, he is appearing, the story's appearing in all these languages. My God. Huh. So that's sort of like, what is that? Joseph and Potiphar's wife. The selections in the anthology are all part of the Joseph Phaedra legend. Examples can be traced from ancient Egypt of 1400 BC to modern Europe, from pagan, Judaic, Christian, Muslim, and Buddhist civilizations. In all of these literatures, there are traditional tales. Oh, so there's tales of a lustful stepmother. Huh. Who propositions suggest you the. Is this like the He Too movement? Like, are you part of He Too? The plea of fly with me? Yeah, is there lustful women? Have you encountered? Well, they claim now. Usually the men are accused of being lustful. And, yeah, you're getting this book may be lustful. So, what are all these books here? It's interesting. Old, this kind of old book in a way, and it refers to the Asian books. The Dhammapada Buddha, the Chatterjee, Siddhartha, Herman Hesse, great Sanskrit plays. Wow. Huh. The Confessions of a Monk. 100 poems from the Chinese life of an amorous woman. Yeah, I would like to meet an amorous woman. Are they have any amor? Do they have more? But you had enough amorous women. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and these are the other books here. It's the tales from the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And say like the will to see. Huh. When you're wandering, the wandering mind, wander. Did you wander into it? Yeah. So this was some of the stuff. Oh, yeah. These are the books on the Kindle. John Mayne I had read. This is like a Paul Smith, The Rose Garden of History, Shabbastari, the Masnavi. Here's the introduction. The Masnavi is the form used in Persian. Actually, he's referring here. E.G. Brown, in his classic work, History of Persian Literature, calls this book, on the whole, one of the best manuals of Sufi theology that exist. Yeah, the people have called this podcast one of the best podcasts that ever existed on Sufism. Yeah, it's the best podcast there ever was. Wow. I'm continuing the tradition of podcasting on a Sunday morning after meditation. Did you meditate? Yeah, my wife is cooking and I did meditation and I finished the podcast and I'm starting another podcast. I'm doing it in a traditional and organized way. Oh, good. So you're gonna do the great triple crown? Are you doing Trinity? What's Trinity to you? Well, it would be meditation, exercise, and what is the other one? Podcasting, reading poetry. Wait a minute. I thought it was playing the piano. Wait, I thought it was piano, exercise, tennis, piano, tennis, and meditation. Wait a minute. What's the order of, what's in the order of priorities? Well, meditation is the first, comes chronological order. Oh, so the first thing you do is meditation. Yeah, meditation can be done at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., or 5 a.m., or 6 a.m. You do it during the crack in the cosmic egg when the God power is at its highest levels before people get up. Oh, so you do it at your convenience or God's convenience, or the most convenient or the most effective time of the day. Well, the quietest time and when people are sleeping is going to be the most effective. What are you saying? That people are the most effective when they're sleeping? Or the most effective to you? Yeah, they are producing the most efficient and effectiveness towards me when they're sleeping, so they don't disrupt my meditation. Oh. Oh, okay, well, all right. Is this an efficient of a podcast about personal effectiveness and life hacks and hacking away and all that stuff? Yeah. This is a Paul Smith book here on Kindle. The Book of Chisti. He's a Sufi. He's pretty famous in India. They say the Sufism moved over, in the latter part moved to India. So in the East, the prophet is called Peygambar, which means the messenger, the one who carries somebody's word to someone else in this podcast. In reality, every individual in this world is the medium of an impulse which is hidden behind him, and that impulse gives out, mostly without knowing it. This is not only so with living beings, but one can see it even in objects. Yeah, even in objects. For every object has its purpose. And by fulfilling its purpose, that object is fulfilling the scheme of nature. Well, yeah, there is probably a grand cosmic plan. Every little object, I suppose, in a finely tuned universe. Therefore, whatever be the line or activity of a man, whether it is business or science or music, or art or poetry, or tennis or meditation, or podcasting, or exercise, he is a medium in some way or other. There are mediums of living beings. There are mediums of those who have passed to the other side. Yeah, the people who passed the other side, like if you argue that time doesn't exist, then the thoughts of Beethoven when he's writing the sonatas or something would still exist in the present. What? Are you trying to connect to the mind of Beethoven in the present moment? You're saying that they're not past thoughts, but they exist in the present. Oh, okay, well, then you could play his sonatas better if you were at least to commune with the thoughts of Beethoven. Yeah, and just have him play it. But how can you make him play it? Does he want to play it? Does he want to connect? There are mediums that represent their country, their nation, and their race. Every individual is acting in his own way as a medium. Well, I could be acting as a medium, I suppose, in some way, in his own way. When the prophet or the poet dives deep into himself, well, if I was a poet and I was to dive deep into myself, he touches that perfection which is the source and goal of all beings. And as an electric wire, using his iPhone to podcast, connected with the battery, receives the force or energy of the battery. Yeah, and I charged my phone. I usually charge them overnight, and I have to. You have to maintain stuff. So the poet who has touched the innermost depths of his being has touched the perfect God. Well, yeah, I had read John Maine, and he had talked about meditating a half hour in the morning and a half hour in the evening, which is almost a minimum to connect to the perfect God. What? That's not perfect. You have to do more than an hour of meditation. It's not perfect. Okay. And from there he derives that wisdom, that beauty, and that power which belong to the perfect self of God. There is no doubt that in all things there is the real and the false, and there is the raw and the ripe. Yeah. The problem is my podcast and my poetry and my piano playing is all still very raw. Yeah, but when is it gonna get ripe if you're already old and you haven't ripened up? Is it gonna be raw for the rest of your life, or are you gonna get ripe or ripen up? Or poetry comes from the tendency to contemplation. Okay, well, it comes from the tendency to contemplation. Huh. So if I contemplate, I could have a tendency to write poetry. A man with imagination cannot retain the imagination, cannot mold it, cannot build it up unless he has this contemplative tendency within him. The more one contemplates, the more one is able to conceive of what one receives. Not only this, but after contemplation, a person is able to realize a certain idea more clearly than if that idea had only passed through his mind. Yeah, some of these times I read and it's just like an idea just sort of passed through my mind, and it wasn't really processed, and it has no real. Sometimes when I'm reading, I haven't contemplated. The readings just don't resonate as having any meaning. Oh. Are you saying that your words are not charged if you don't meditate prior to doing your podcast? Yeah. If I don't have prior to podcasting, if I don't have any coffee, I could be. They just don't have any charge if I don't drink coffee. The process of contemplation is like the work of the camera in this podcast, or cell phone, or Samsung, or Samsung Ultra S22. When the camera is put before a certain object and has been properly focused, and only, yeah, this one I properly focused it as a portrait video, so if it has a portrait video, it's properly focused. Yeah. So I have properly focused this podcast. So don't complain about it. This podcast is focused. So I don't want to hear any complaints, arguments. Then only that object is received by the camera, and therefore when an object before one is limited, then one can see that object more clearly. What constitutes the appeal of the poet is that he tells his readers of something. What's the appeal of the podcaster is that he tells his readers, listeners, of something he has seen behind these generally recognized ideas. Yeah, sometimes I've seen these things behind these generally recognized ideas. Like I may have seen the life-inspiring glance of the master. I may have seen the higher planes. I may have seen maybe the kundalini. I may have seen the snakes all wrapped around my head, and with the risen up kundalini, not just sitting there like a lump like at the bottom, stuck there. Yeah. You don't want your kundalini just stuck. It should come up and very naturally, and you don't have to force it into pranayama for 1,000 years. Okay. The prophet goes still further. He not only contemplates one idea, but he can contemplate on any idea. That's why I have such a variety of books, because I can contemplate on any idea. I don't just have one idea. I have a lot of them, okay? Oh. Like, let's say you have the Kyoto school. If you were to look at the Kyoto school of philosophy, on the Japanese philosophy, in religion and nothingness, like if you say religion and nothingness, in religion and nothingness, the leading representative of the Kyoto school of philosophy. What's in that book? Actually, I haven't read this book, and I don't know if I will. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. Oh. Now, you actually read Latin American, Native Indian philosophy. Oh, God. What's in that? The goal of integrating Mesoamerican thought into the history of philosophy is made in this podcast. What? The Aztecs? That's an Aztecian philosophy. I haven't read that much either. This is a book sample, so I really am jumping around because it's more suitable for the Gen Zs and for the current age of lack of attention, because people lack attention now. So that's why I'm trying to create distraction in this podcast. Mm. So if you wander around in a book, this is called the Wandering Around in a Book podcast. This is the Wandering Mind. So actually, now I'm doing intra-book wandering between Kindle and actual books. This is the Wandering Mind book, page 5, introduction. But usually distraction meant doing something you didn't want to do. Yeah, but do you want to do meditation? Well, yeah, I actually enjoy meditation. I enjoy, yeah, if you accumulate, if you practice meditation, it becomes more functional, and works better, and it actually, you can have what I try to say is instant on third eye. You turn on right away, so there's not a wait, and you can get the benefits of the. Oh, is that for health and long life, or what are you looking for as a benefit? Yeah, but usually distraction meant doing something you didn't want to do. Yeah, but you can change that by building your doing meditation. I'm saying you can want to do meditation and being drawn into thoughts you didn't want to have. But I have thoughts that I don't want to have, so that's distraction. Yeah, when I have thoughts that I don't want to have during meditation, that's distraction. These were the distractions that monks wanted to dodge. Yeah, I guess it's all about mind control. Wait a minute. Are you controlling in this podcast? And Gregory the Great offers a famous point, case in point. Gregory had been a monk before becoming a deacon, and then Bishop of Rome in 590. Yeah, this book is what medieval monks tell us about distraction. He often felt the position pulled him away from the contemplative practices he loved. Yeah, if I was to become like a priest, or a preacher, or a pastor, or a minister, or something like that, it would pull me away from contemplative practices. So I would be pulled away, and it would be harmful for my progress. Oh, okay. Yeah. The prologue of his dialogues, a text that was enormously popular in the early Middle Ages, begins with Gregory sneaking away from his job. Yeah, I actually snuck away to do this podcast because I didn't want to make a noise and wake up everybody, and my wife was cooking in the kitchen, and I could have done it there, but there'd be a lot of noise. And I snuck away from my job of doing this podcast for a few moments of quiet as a distraction from his distractions. So this podcast is a distraction from your distractions. The ship of my mind is being battered by cyclones. Yeah, and I've been battered by like lawsuits, and I've been battered by there was an earthquake recently, and then I was battered. I've been battered all my whole life, and beaten up by life itself. And what happened to you? Oh. He lamented to the deacon who found him in his hiding spot, and then he launched into a series of stories for his deacon and for his readers about holy figures who had led better lives than he did. Yeah, well, yeah, my life has been better than his. His life was crappy because, first of all, he's in the medieval times, and he has to be Bishop of Rome, which is probably quite irritating and would have disrupted his practices. And to be famous disrupts your practice. Yeah, like to be in organized religion sometimes can disrupt your practice. If Gregory had remained a monk instead of becoming the best known bishop of the early Middle Ages, however, he probably wouldn't have fared any better. Monks, too, had jobs that forced them to think about things they didn't like. Yeah, actually, yeah, like it's never appealed to me that much. It hasn't appealed to me to be a monk, because first of all, I don't like work, and I don't like cleaning work, and I'm also highly disobedient. I won't do any. I'm rebellious, extremely rebellious. The only way I can be in a monastery is for me to be the high priest, for me to be the abbot. So I would have to be the hefe or the supreme boss. So when I get a monastery, I'm gonna be I'm gonna be the abbot of the monastery. So I set the rules and all that stuff. So, and I don't do any work at all. So you don't clean up. How could you claim to be a santo? How could you? You don't seem to fit at all. I could see why they don't want you in the monastery. Yeah, I would not be. I claim, I've already said I'm the worst initiate on the path. I'm a lot like Kabir, because he said he was the worst of the worst. He says it right in probably the Guru Granth even. He's the worst. I'm the worst disciple on the path. So I'm not trying to make it look like I'm not the worst. I haven't even committed to doing that much work. Like if I was to go to Veggie Fest in Chicago, I'm terrible doing selfless service. I'm really horrible, and I hardly do any. What happened to you? Aren't you going to bring any cookies? You could bring sugar-free cookies, or you could. Why don't you bring something to set? Saying a guy he brought Indian food. They're like I have so long I've eaten long and I haven't eaten Indian food that I forgot the names almost. You don't eat Indian food. What kind of Indian philosopher, kind of monk are you? What do you eat? Oh, why, I wonder if my wife will make chocolate. So, you read about these monks. Well, they clearly had political problems in the monasteries. So that's why for a long time I've had a monastery where I'm the only person in the monastery. Can't you even get one or two followers or anything? Or can't you ever find somebody to meditate with? No, that's hopeless. You'll never find anybody who likes meditation. Everybody on the path, hardly anybody meditates. What? Well, you went to Chicago and There must have been somebody in the meditation room at the time, yeah. Well, I'm kind of weird because I meditate in the daytime. What? Oh, and the nighttime and the morning time. Well, I meditate in the morning. Oh, wait, you meditate a sunrise and sunset. Transition period. Yeah. Anthony of Choziba in what's now the West Bank. Now we're in the West Bank. Complained, for instance, that his position at the monastery's cellar was a distraction. Oh, God. Yeah, my position in the cellar. But the more common problem, and the more serious one, was that even when monks created the perfect conditions for concentration, they still found themselves unable to focus on what mattered most to them, namely on God, on the divine logic that structured the universe from its creation to the last judgment, and on their moral obligations within that system. Huh. Yeah, why is it so hard to focus even for a few seconds on God? Well, it's a lot like exercise, I suppose. It takes practice. Is it similar to playing tennis or playing the piano? Like you have to practice? Yeah, like if I have a difficult sections, I finally learned how to practice the difficult parts of the piece. What? Yeah, you practice over and over repetitively the parts that you can't play. Oh, so you create tape loops and you practice. Yeah, what I've started to doing is creating like these repetitive loops, and within the piece, I actually may continue. I wonder if I do a loop thing where the hard section you repeat it over and over again to at an insane level. Well, they do that already on the internet with their reels and they have things that just repeat and repeat and repeat, and you could repeat it on TikTok or something. Yeah, I could just have the TikTok do meditation. Stretching the mind and the self out to these subjects was a monk's core job requirement, and even more crucially, monks saw it as a matter of eternal life and death, the fate of the soul, and even the souls of other people hung in the balance. Yeah, the souls of other people hang in the balance of this podcast. Monks were not simply trying to get more work done. These men and women were trying to align themselves with the ethics of salvation. The stakes could not have been more serious. So you may say that I'm making fun of this stuff, and I'm turning it into a comedy podcast, but there's nothing more serious than this podcast.